Or did they just hate it because women bads? Or how about Rings of Power? Do you think Tolkien fans
Are we gonna talk about Obi-Wan at any point? Rings of Power isn't even fucking out, and I feel like these guys can't fucking handle it. This is ridiculous. This Organized Chaos video is brought to you by Gems Art Studio. This video is also brought to you by viewers like you. Thank you. Hello again, continuing this ongoing saga at the fan outrage over Obi-Wan Kenobi. I really don't understand. I so far think it's a decent series. Sure, it's not flawless, but oh my god, people are going so hyperbolic against it. It is absolutely bizarre how hyperbolic they're getting. Listen, I felt like people got a bit hyperbolic over the sequels back when those came out. But there is way more to go at for the prequel trilogy than there is for Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan is largely much better made than the prequels. It doesn't have non-stop CGI getting in your face. Doesn't have really bad dialogue getting in your face. It's not perfect, but Obi-Wan's pretty good. But anyways, for this episode, we're going into Critical Drinker. And he just released one. I thought he released one like a few days ago. But apparently he only has one Obi-Wan episode out. It might be something. He does like a stream or a podcast. And I might have been looking at those. But he just released this 18 minutes ago. So we're hot off the presses of this one. The Truth About Toxic Fandoms. Now, I'll be blunt. If this is anything like the Ben Shapiro thing, this is going to be really cringe. Listen. If you criticize Obi-Wan Kenobi, cool. I'm going to go full screen for this. You are allowed to criticize Obi-Wan Kenobi. If you attack one of the actors from Obi-Wan Kenobi, not going to name names, but if you attack an actor for Obi-Wan Kenobi with racist messages, not cool. If you attacked any actor with racist messages, not cool. Attacking with racism in general is not cool. I've gotten bombardments from these people like this, these right-wing assholes. I've gotten attacked from them. And I imagine the attacks I've gotten have been insignificant to the attacks these people on these big shows like Obi-Wan Kenobi or any Star Wars thing. Insignificant to stuff like Kelly Marie Tran got or Leslie Jones. It's been insignificant to that. And the stuff I've gotten has gone to me a bit. Occasionally. So here's the deal. I will defend you if you have legit criticisms against Obi-Wan Kenobi. That is 100% fine. If you just say, the series is kind of boring, cool. I don't agree with you, but that's a criticism. If you think someone's maybe not giving the best performance, guess what? Again, cool. Legit criticism. But if you're saying Obi-Wan Kenobi sucks because it's pushing a message, fuck off. You can critique the writing saying, you can say, hey, I think maybe the message is getting in the way of the writing because so-and-so doesn't work. That's actually a legit criticism. But if you're just going against it because the message, which most of these fuckers do, bad, wrong. Having a message by itself does not make something bad. But these people will blindly just attack anything just because it has a message. Everything has a fucking message. Everything. All pieces of art have a message to some degree. You can't just attack it because it has a fucking message. That's dumb. And like that Ben Shapiro video I watched last, I guess it'd be like 2 episodes ago. He was actually going out there and defending the racist attacks, saying if they don't name names, it doesn't count. That was essentially his argument. They're saying, they're doing racist attacks, but they don't name names, it doesn't count. Fuck you, buddy. Fuck you. That's bullshit. And he's trying to make it out like they aren't actually getting racist attacks, but we saw what happened with Kelly Marie Tran. Are they trying to get ahead of this? Hopefully they have gotten ahead of it. Hopefully it won't be that big a deal. But it's bad. And Ewan McGregor said you aren't a real Star Wars fan if you attack people, if you get racist. If you're racist, you're not a real Star Wars fan. That was essentially what he said in that little video. And I agree 100% with the that video. You are not a person in this community I want to associate with if you're a racist. Plus, if you're watching Star Wars, do you not realize that Star Wars has been fairly political? Star Wars is really anti-fascist. Have you missed that about Star Wars? It's super anti-fascist. But anyways, we're going to see what he says, because he's going to be defending the truth about toxic fandoms. It sounds like he's going to be defending the people who are racist in the fandom. So let's see what he says.
You know, one of the charming little phrases that really seems to be doing the rounds these days is toxic fandoms. And holy shit, are they tearing the arse out of this one. It seems like everywhere you look, there's a tidal wave of hand-wringing, self-righteous op-eds bemoaning the toxic state of whatever fandom is currently in the news. Star Wars, Star Trek, Ghostbusters, Lord of the Rings. Shit man, even Halo fans are toxic now apparently. So what the fuck's going on? Why is every fandom suddenly more hazardous to your health than a 2-week self-catering holiday in Chernobyl? Well, all of this stuff came to a bit of a head recently when Moses Ingram, one of the main actors in Kenobi, shared a couple of samples of the abuse she'd been getting on Instagram. Nasty stuff that she absolutely didn't deserve. But what's even more interesting is the media firestorm that erupted in the wake of it. Suddenly articles started popping up everywhere
Well, I mean, at least he said it's bad. We'll see where he goes with
complaining
it.
about the toxic state of the Star Wars fandom, how it's riddled with ists and phobes, and how something needs to be done, goddammit. Even the official Star Wars Twitter account decided to weigh in on the situation.
Yeah, and I have no problem. These tweets are just essentially saying don't be an asshole and don't be racist. Fine. These are generic corporate tweets. I hate corporations, but this is generic stuff. This is 101.
Because, you know, insulting your own fan base and lumping everyone into...
Whoa. They did not insult their fan base with these tweets. The only fan base they insulted with these tweets are the assholes and the racist. If you were insulted by these tweets, you are an asshole or a racist. Probably both. Like, essentially, they're calling out... Like, that bomb one is explicitly calling out racist. So if you're insulted by that, what does that make you?
To the same basket is a surefire way to get people on your sides. Now, if I was a cynical man, I'd say it almost looks like this controversy wasn't just something they were prepared for, it's something they were practically counting on.
Okay. Yes. You want to know why? Because it's happened before. Last Jedi was a huge deal. Fucking Kelly Marie Tran got badged a lot. Yes, they were prepared for it. In fact, they were probably planning on it because there are lots of fucking assholes in the world and they've done this before. They'd be idiots not to be prepared for this.
Because if you're able to focus everyone's attention on allegations of abuse and discrimination against one of your actors, then suddenly all the actual criticisms of your show get conveniently forgotten about.
Well, here's an idea. Let's actually, provide some valid criticisms instead of focusing on that. That's the thing. I keep on watching these critiques, and very few of them have valid criticisms. It's ridiculous. And instead, they want to talk about the controversy, or honestly, just be racist.
Because let's be honest here, who cares about the opinions of a group of toxic haters that were never going to be happy anyway? But here's the problem. The overwhelming majority of the criticism for this show had absolutely nothing to do with one particular actress,
Okay, but let's see it. Let's see it. I've yet to see really good, valid criticisms of the show. You know, and if you have your issues, sure. But that's not what's being trumpeted right now. So let's hear valid criticism of the show.
much less the innate characteristics she was born with. Based on pretty much every video and Twitter post that I've seen on the subject, people are annoyed because it's becoming increasingly obvious with every passing episode that Kenobi isn't really about Kenobi.
Really? Really? We're going to stay on this train, even though the show is very much about Kenobi. This is his arc about how he got, everything he believed in Revenge of the Sith got destroyed. And this story is actually covering the middle ground, how he changes from the guy at the end of Revenge of the Sith to the guy at the beginning of A New Hope. And it actually makes sense. The fact that he was still, I feel like George Lucas, when he wrote Revenge of the Sith, wanted it to flow directly into the New Hope, which it does to his credit to a degree. But it's not realistic for the Kenobi character to be like that. It makes more sense for him to at least have a down period, which this show is showing. It's his arc.
It's just another example of Lucasfilm milking a popular legacy character for their name recognition.
Yes, that's what they're doing. The question is, do they do a good job? Listen, I brought this up before. Disney does not give a fuck about Star Wars. But the hope is that they hire good people who do give a fuck about Star Wars. Because here's the deal. The corporate heads don't care about doing a good story. They just want something that will sell. And more importantly, they do understand to a degree that you need to keep a franchise in good standing, more or less, so that people will be excited for the next entry. You don't want to burn it into the ground. So you want to at least hire people who are good at stories to be in charge of the artistic art aspects, which is what they do shoot for. They don't care about the IP other than that makes them money, and they do understand the best way to make money is to keep the IP in good standing with a lot of people. That being said, Jesus Christ, I don't feel there's much. All fandoms are getting this way. I'm not sure there's anything you can do with the really negative Star Wars fans. Just, it's obnoxious.
Then altering their personality, removing most of their agency.
This is Obi-Wan at a down point in his life, which makes sense. The Jedi, everything that he has been raised. Up to this point, we have not seen anything about Obi-Wan that hasn't related to being a Jedi. That's pretty much his all fucking identity, entirely what we've seen. And what we're seeing at this point in the series is that the entire Jedi Order has been destroyed. Why do I always have to explain this shit? Because these assholes always ignore the clear story plot points in favor of their fucking narrative, and I'm sick of it.
Charisma, resilience, skill and intelligence, and generally diminishing them so they can play second fiddle to the new original character that the show is actually focused on.
The villain. You know, there used to be a saying, I don't hear it too much anymore because it goes against these guys' narrative. But the saying is, a good hero is only as good as their villain. So you want a good villain. Now, I have, there's been a shot or two where I've not been sold, Reva. I don't feel like Moses Ingram has sold it as well as she could have. That being said, we haven't gone into the actual origin story. We haven't gone to the guts of her story. So I'm really hoping she pulls it through there. We don't know that much about her character, other than that she works for a Sith Inquisitor, and she's probably a Sith Inquisitor herself, yeah. And she's the main bad guy. She's the main baddie. Do you want a villain that's not developed at all? Do you want a non-existent villain? Would that be better?
And I think that infamous tweet from the official Star Wars account gave away more than they'd intended. Now pay attention 007 because this bit's important. They are excited for Reva's story to unfold. I think that tells you pretty much everything you need to know about the writer's intentions here. The show might be called Kenobi, but it's actually Reva's story.
Oh god, they're responding to her racist DMs that she got. That's a direct response to that. Oh, Jesus Christ, these people and their fucking narrative.
It's a classic bait and switch tactic to drum up interest in something that most people wouldn't have given a shit about. Lucasfilm have been lying to their own fanbase, promising one thing but delivering something else, and now that they've been found out, what do? Well, they could take the criticism on the chin, acknowledge that what they delivered may not have been what was promised, and ask people to judge the show on its own merits. Or they could.
Why would you ask somebody to judge the show on its own merits? You're supposed to judge the show on its own merits. That's a weird ask. Hey, can you do me a favor and judge the show on its own merits? That's what you're supposed to do. That's what these guys aren't doing. That's what Critical Drinker isn't doing here. Even before this show came out, they were talking about how it's supposed to be a bait and switch and Reva would be the main character. And now they're maintaining that narrative, even though it's outrageously clear she's not the main character. Obi-Wan's the main character. She's the main villain.
Could create a manufactured controversy to simultaneously draw
Yes, manufactured controversy because they haven't named names. We've seen this before. The argument that there aren't toxic Star Wars fans is absolutely insane. And, I've brought up how, there seems to be toxic fans in all fan bases. And let's face it, it primarily comes from the right. The right-wing fans seem to be the worst in all these cases. Like, Star Wars, you want to argue Star Wars isn't political? You're insane. Star Wars has always been fairly political. Not as political as Star Trek gets, but it's fairly political. It is clear the Empire are a stand-in for fascists, and Nazis more explicitly, but fascists in general, and fascist ideology. That's what the Empire is. So if you want to argue Star Wars hasn't been political, then you're fooling yourself. It's always been political. And once again, I'll also explain fascism is pretty explicitly a right-wing ideology. Fascism does not come from the left. If you think it comes from the left, you just are not researching things properly. That's not how it works. But yeah, Star Trek has been very political. Star Wars has always been political from its origin, though. So don't argue that it hasn't been political. And just this idea that this is a bait and switch and that this series isn't about Obi-Wan Kenobi is insane. We're seeing Obi-Wan Kenobi from a low point, and obviously it gives him an arc. Listen, if Obi-Wan Kenobi was just kicking ass the entire series, wouldn't that be boring? Wouldn't that be boring that do you just want a series where he has nothing to overcome and no arc at all? That's what I swear they want. And then, he has no arc, but we still have Reva, who has, a storyline. And then you're going to argue that her storyline doesn't override his if she has an arc and he doesn't? Because I'm sure she's going to have an arc as well. And that's another thing to point out. It's kind of clear what Obi-Wan Kenobi's arc's going to be. I have no idea what Reva's arc's going to be.
Attention away from their devious skullduggery and publicly discredit their most vocal critics. I wonder which one they chose. It was basically the same deal with Star Trek Discovery. A lot of people had some pretty valid criticisms of main character Michael Burnham, namely that she was a very obvious retcon inserted into a storyline that she was never meant to be part of.
Well, no, that wasn't the main critique. That's not a good critique of her at all. Because whenever you insert something into a timeline, a new story, you're going to have issues like that. It's not that huge of a retcon. It's less of a retcon than Spock suddenly having a brother in Star Trek V, but that was a whole nother shit show. But the issue with Michael Burnham, and I think they've gotten a lot better, it's mainly a season 1 issue, is that in Star Trek has traditionally been like an ensemble, but season 1 is super dedicated to Michael Burnham, and the other seasons to a degree, but they tone it down, I feel like, each season coming up. And so much of the story focuses on her in season 1 that all the other characters get pushed aside, Stamets gets a little bit, and that's almost about it in season 1. They've gotten better. But I've only seen the first 3 seasons. Season 2 and Season 3 are significantly better than Season 1. Michael Burnham still is the main character to a degree, although it's quite a bit less in Season 3. It's becoming more of an ensemble in Season 3, which I'm grateful, and in Season 2. But the issue with Michael wasn't that even necessarily that she was a bad character, it's just she's overriding everything. It's like she's not a bad character, but can we have any other characters, please? Her being retconned isn't an issue because you have to do retcons to a degree whenever you insert a storyline in an already established timeline. New things will have to be added. The question is, do they do a good job? And I think with Burnham, it's okay.
That the writers diminished and undermined established legacy characters to...
How do they diminish and undermine established legacy characters? How do they do that? Just introducing new characters does not diminish the legacy characters. Stop acting like it does.
Elevate her to borderline messiah who solves almost every problem single-handed, or that she generally comes across as arrogant, self-righteous, disrespectful, impulsive and insubordinate without ever answering for these flaws.
Well, she did, the big thing she did in the pilot 2-parter, God, we're on Star Trek now for some reason. I just talked about Star Trek too, because it falls under the same thing that Star Wars does frequently. But anyways, the 2-parter, she essentially does a mutiny against the captain, and then the captain ends up dying, and then she's in military prison, and then she's brought out of military prison. I don't remember how. It's been a long time since I've seen season 1. She works her way back up to captain throughout the years, but I want to say the end of season 3 where she gets the captain's chair. And in case you're wondering, spoilers for a couple-year-old season right now, season 3 takes place like 1,000 years in the future. So it's a long time after that. She did do fuck-ups. Acting like she didn't do fuck-ups and didn't get a penalty for it is insane. Because I remember even when I watched the pilot, I liked that they gave her shit, that she did like the bad call, essentially. Like, they gave us a bad call that she did, and she did pay a price for it.
But no, clearly toxic fans just hated her because of her gender and skin color, ignoring the...
Well, fans with a valid complaint were fine. It was the people attacking her for her race, which there are fucking plenty. There are lots of people that will attack you for your... I'm certain there's lots of people that will attack you for your race, for your sex, for your gender identity, for your sexual identity. Lots of people will attack you for all that shit. How do I know? Because I've been attacked, and all I've said is I'm an ally. I'm about as fucking normal as you get on the spectrum of all this shit. I just have said, hey, let people live their lives normally, and I've been attacked. So, fuck these people, seriously.
The fact that there's been decades of popular characters of every race, sex, and species long before Saint Michael was ever dreamed up. Or how about Ghostbusters 2016? Were fans angry because the studio shit-canned a sequel they'd been wanting for years and instead delivered a dumb, cartoonish, painfully unfunny reboot that absolutely nobody asked for, directed by a man with zero understanding of the subject matter? Or...
okay, so Ghostbusters. Jesus Christ, he's really fishing around for stuff because he hasn't even gotten to any real complaints of Obi-Wan Kenobi, has he? He's just jumping around to different stuff. Okay, Ghostbusters. The issue with Ghostbusters was, yes, we wanted a Ghostbusters 3, and it wasn't happening. So, when Harold Ramis died, they did this reboot, which was... it's not good, it's not bad, it's blah. It has its moments of good, and it has its moments as bad. It's overall kind of just blah. Ghostbusters Afterlife was a huge improvement. And people on the internet went absolutely insane about it. And a lot of their attacks were based on the fact that they were women. And lots of times they like to code it, no, we're not attacking it's women. We're attacking that they're changing the original so much. Why? And they'd always be like, why does it have to be women? Well, why not women? What's wrong with women? Now, the movie wasn't great, but wasn't as bad as they made it out to be. It was ridiculous.
Or did they just hate it because women bad? Or how about Rings of Power? Do you think Tolkien fans are...
Are we going to talk about Obi-Wan at any point? Rings of Power isn't even fucking out, and I feel like these guys can't fucking handle it. This is ridiculous.
Pushing back against the show's very obvious attempts to twist and alter the lore of a classic and beloved fantasy world, and...
Well, you know what? Tolkien wrote The Hobbit, The Lord of the Rings, and those have already been turned into movies. God, they add so much to The Hobbit. And all they have left is the Silmarillion, which... I'll be blunt, I haven't read, but I doubt there's a whole series worth of stuff in there. So yeah, they're going to have to get creative. Cool.
Infuse it with divisive 21st century sensibilities and ideology? Or do you think they just instinctively lose their minds at the prospect of different levels of melanin being shown on screen? What all this comes down to...
Well, why do you care about the levels of melanin being shown on screen? Why is it so important to you that you feel the need to bring it up?
Is another little phrase that started to pop up quite a bit in recent years. Crafting the narrative. See, most people aren't really driven by dry facts.
He's talking about crafting the narrative when that's exactly what he's pushing. He's pushing a narrative. The narrative that, hey, it's okay to bash on shows because of the lead being black or a woman or any other reason. Because it's against the original. Because the original didn't do that, so the new one shouldn't do that. He's pushing the narrative that it's okay to be racist, sexist, transphobe, homophobe. It's okay to be that way. As long as you are, defending the original. Then it's okay. That's his narrative.
and figures and data points because those things have to be studied in detail and understood and interpreted, and all of that takes time and effort. And that's a real problem because people today are usually too busy, too distracted by a dozen other demands on their attention, or just too fucking lazy to do actual research of their own. What they need instead is something that generates a visceral emotional reaction to get them engaged. A series of extreme sensationalized examples strung together into a simple, cohesive, easy to...
I like how he's going on, and he hasn't, like, he's talked about, oh, there's valid complaints of Obi-Wan, and it's not just that there's a black character in it. And then he spends most of the story with his biggest complaint being, oh, the one black character is overriding Obi-Wan, when she is definitely not. She's the villain, for fuck's sake. And then just talk about every fucking thing else in the world. Guys, this video is at 8 minutes and 21 seconds. Do you want to know how long a video has to be on YouTube to get extra ad breaks? The answer is 8 minutes.
Digest opinion, i.e. a narrative. And if that opinion happens to line up with what they already believe, because they've been told the same thing by a bunch of other sources, then so much the better. And that's exactly what we're seeing now. A very obvious attempt to craft a new narrative.
Yes, this is Disney crafting a narrative to get ahead of this asshole and other assholes like him narratives.
And use it to shame and ridicule anyone who dares to criticize their work. This movie isn't actually...
Well, here's an idea. Instead of spending a whole episode talking about toxic fandom, why don't you make an actual episode, fucking 8 minutes, whatever, however long you want to do an episode, critiquing the issues you have specifically with Obi-Wan without talking about race or sexual, actually, I can't even think of anything. Don't talk about race or gender at all. Do what you said earlier. Review Obi-Wan. Do a video talk about Obi-Wan, talking about it for its own quality. Judge it for itself. But you're not going to do that because you have your own fucking narrative. This is...
Holy shit, it's just the work of toxic fans who are never happy with anything. This character isn't badly written, unlikable, or awkwardly inserted into a story they don't belong in. It's just toxic fans who can't stand to see diversity.
If you have an issue with Rose Tico as the character, there are valid complaints. I like her sentiment in The Last Jedi, but it was weird timing. It was definitely weird timing. So if you have issues with that, sure. But if you're just going to do racist messages against her, go fuck off.
It's your inclusion. This actor didn't deliver an unconvincing performance or make a bunch of dumb statements in real life. The backlash against them is just down to a fundamentally toxic fandom. Every single time, the same
Brie Larson, yay!
Accusations of bigotry and toxicity get flung around like monkeys throwing their poo at each other. But what does any of this actually accomplish except to piss off and alienate the very people that you're trying to appeal to? Moderate fans who might have had a few issues with shows like Kenobi, but generally still support new Star Wars projects, are going to feel like they're being unfairly labelled as something that they're not. People who were already hostile to Disney and Lucasfilm are going to have their opinions vindicated by a company that seems determined to antagonise them. This constant cycle of social media sniping, suspiciously timed hit piece articles and preachy opinion pieces only serves to contribute to a general atmosphere of animosity and resentment between fans and studios. The more you bite back at your fans and try to score short-term victories over them, the more you'll piss them off in the long run and the less forgiving they'll be of your next project. This means more criticism of your work, which in turn leads to more counterattacks, and well, I think you get the drift. Like Star Trek Picard showrunner Michael Chabon, who straight up admitted that he made certain creative decisions simply to provoke and piss off elements of the fan base that...
Yes, because if you're gonna be toxic about the slightest shit, guess what? It becomes pretty easy to troll you. Good for him. Good for him.
He decided were toxic. Now ask yourself a serious question. Do you really think this kind of spiteful, childish bullshit is gonna win people over to your side?
You know what? But you know what? You guys are so easy to troll. Literally, just put a woman in lead character and you guys blow up. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Basically
what I'm saying here is that if you treat your own fans like enemies, then that's exactly what you're gonna make them. Now,
well, if a vocal minority, I want to stress this is a vocal minority of toxic fans, are going to be pissed off no matter what you do. Because there are people who are going into Obi-Wan Kenobi just fucking hate watching it. They've already decided before they started putting it on that they're going to hate it, and that's what they're doing. That's pretty fucking toxic in my opinion. Why are you even fucking watching it at that point? You should always go into everything you watch with an open mind. I don't care what your preconceptions are. Go into it with an open mind. And then if it delivers exactly what you feared, then talk about it. But always go into it with an open mind. These assholes aren't doing that. Notice how Drinker hasn't really even talked about Obi-Wan Kenobi. He's just talking about all the shit, like some shit around Obi-Wan Kenobi, and then kind of saying, oh yeah, racist messages are bad. But you know what? It's not a big deal. He's trivializing the online, like, assault these actors get, which is bullshit. It's bullshit.
All that being said, I don't doubt for a second that there are some genuinely shitty individuals out there, and they should rightly be called out for their bigotry, but that's exactly what they are, individuals.
So they should be called out for their bigotry, which is what Disney did, and now you're criticizing them for doing that.
They don't represent the larger fan base they claim to be part of, and try.
Well, listen, all Disney Star Wars Twitter account, all they did was call out the racist and the assholes. And if you were triggered by that, because as a Star Wars fan, I read those tweets and I'm like, fine, cool. If you were triggered by those tweets, that means you are a racist or an asshole and probably both. That's all that fucking means. If you're triggered by those tweets, look at yourself.
Trying to tar everyone with the same brush is disingenuous as fuck. Toxicity isn't some convenient label that you can just slap on anyone who dares to criticize you. It's not a magical shield to protect you from negative feedback. Criticizing bad storytelling isn't toxic. Criticizing a director who delivered a poor product, an actor who turned in a bad performance, or said stupid things in real life isn't toxic. If people...
Okay, but it gets pretty toxic when you go... Like, okay, so he's obviously talking about Brie Larson in a fucking Star Wars video. God. When you spend... God, how long... Like, a lot of these YouTubers have probably spent hundreds of hours railing against Brie Larson over stupid comments. And if you're gonna use those stupid comments said in real life to critique her work in Captain Marvel, no. You cannot do that. The best you can say is, hey, I don't like what she said in real life, but here are my thoughts on the movie. Because you should go into the movie with the open mind, no matter what she said in real life. But they don't. They conflate the two. And I've said it before. Captain Marvel's not perfect. It's kind of blah. But God, these guys rail against it so hard that it's ridiculous. And he's showing clips from Star Trek First Contact, which is pretty good, and I don't think there's any toxic fandom around that, so I don't know what he's talking about.
People have a problem with the story that you've told, the characters you've written, or even the opinions you've expressed in public, then they have every right to call you out on it. You're not obliged to listen to them, but you don't get to silence or discredit them just because you don't like what they're saying.
How have they been silenced? They haven't really been silenced, they just got called out.
Because if those are the kind of underhanded tactics that you find yourself relying on, then maybe it's time you start asking yourself who the toxic one really is. Anyway, that's all I've got for today. Go away now.
You know, I watched that Batman review, and I've actually been semi-tempted to maybe watch his, Everything Everywhere All at Once review, because that was a good movie, and apparently he gave a recommendation. And I think there's a chance that if he's, like, just doing a review of a whole thing, just an actual real review, he probably is decent. I think he probably has decent critic chops on him. But what happens when he does shit like this is he's selling out, honestly. He is just interested in pushing whatever right-wing media commentary narrative there is going on. And that's all he's doing. I actually think Critical Drinker could be like a fun, like, Mr. Plinkett style channel if he, rather than selling out to these ideas, rather just offered honest critiques. But I think he's a sellout. That's what I think. He is pushing a narrative in this video. He's talking about Disney pushing a narrative, but he's pushing his narrative just as hard. he barely talked about Obi-Wan Kenobi. He talks about, oh, some people have valid complaints about this character. And then he talks about how this character is the real star of the show, not Obi-Wan, which is a completely invalid critique, in my opinion. If that's your critique of Obi-Wan, then I don't even think you're fucking watching Obi-Wan. She's the fucking villain, you dipshit. Yeah, and Disney calling out racist in the Star Wars fan base. All fan bases, if they're big enough, will have assholes in them. They will. And there's nothing wrong with calling them out. The only way you are triggered by those tweets is if there's something wrong with you. Look at yourself.
They think order and chaos are somehow opposites and try to control what won't be.
I used to fuck guys like you in prison.